Wow, what a way to kick off this brand new Premier League season. Game week 1 did not disappoint. Lots of drama, goals, upsets and brand new signings making their mark. I believe we are going to be in for a fantastic Premier League season, whether it be at the top of the league with several teams challenging for the title, and potentially at the bottom where we could see one, maybe two of the promoted sides staying in the Premier League. So let's dive straight into the action because there's a lot to talk about. The first game of the Premier League season was at Anfield, where Liverpool beat Bournemouth 4-2. Now this was an emotional evening, the first league game since the death of Diogo Jota, so you could forgive the team if they weren't at their best on the night. But right from the off, Liverpool seemed really up for it, and one of their new boys, Ekitike, was starting up front. He looked lively, but also incredibly raw. He bumbled his way through to score the first goal of the night, so he scored in his debut. And yeah, things were looking good for Liverpool. They soon got a second through Gakpo, also assisted by Ekitike. And during the game, there was certainly moments, flashes of brilliance from the likes of Wirtz, another one of their new signings. So things were looking good for Liverpool. But at the same time, at the back, it was a different story completely. For me, the new wing-backs, Frimpong and Kerkez, they looked weak, vulnerable. And Konate, he's always had his critics. He looked very leggy, slow, unfit throughout the game. And so they did look vulnerable as a defensive unit. Of course, there was no Gravenberch in centre midfield. That really showed. And in fact, Kerkez was too fired up, really, against his old team, Bournemouth. He was often bullied by Semenyo. And in the end, both new boys at the wing-back position were subbed around the 60-minute mark. Now, there was talk of Frimpong potentially carrying a knock. That makes sense, but Kerkez was on a yellow card and he was having a tough time against Semenyo. The second half was a completely different story, where Bournemouth clawed their way back into the game, making it 2-2 on the night. And yeah, Liverpool were looking shaky, definitely looking shaky at the back. But in the end, pure heart got the Reds through the game, with forgotten man Chiesa coming off the bench to score late. And Salah rounded things off, getting the fourth goal. It's funny, isn't it? Salah can play a whole 90 minutes and effectively do nothing all game, and then he somehow comes up with a goal, comes up with the goods at the end. He is such a superstar, isn't he? You just got to keep him on the pitch because at any given moment he could produce the goods. Liverpool deserved to win, but Bournemouth, considering they were decimated during the transfer window, they lost pretty much their whole of their defensive line at the back. They looked very organised, and that's credit to the manager, obviously the recruitment that they've brought in to replace those players. And so, whilst initially I was thinking Bournemouth could have a bad season, a bit like Brentford, in actual fact, from Friday's showing, you could argue that Bournemouth looked just as good. Yeah, they look solid. And so, if they can keep hold of Semenyo, get Kluivert back in the team, Evan Nielsen can pop up with some goals, and if that back four can really gel well together as a unit, I think they'll be okay. Now, it is worth mentioning, while Semenyo was incredible on the night, he was subject to some racist abuse from a fan, I believe, a Liverpool fan. And so you know that Liverpool are swiftly going to deal with this. They're going to take action, probably ban him or her for life. I don't know the ins and outs of who it was, but he made the referee know, made them aware of what was going on. And you clearly could see that he didn't let it affect him. He turned up in a big way, responded really well, bagging 2 goals for Bournemouth. And he is a real talent. I am actually quite surprised that no one came in for him. When Spurs signed Kudus from West Ham, I thought they should have gone for Semenyo. But anyway, it is what it is. He's still at Bournemouth and he's going to show everyone why they should have signed him. So moving on to Saturday's games, the early kickoff was Villa-Newcastle. I'm not going to lie, that was an absolute bore draw. I tried to watch it. It was so boring. You could clearly tell that both teams were just dejected from having a pretty bad summer transfer window. Obviously, Newcastle have got their saga still ongoing with Isak, and it really showed on the pitch actually because Newcastle were the better team. They did create chances, but they've got no striker. They've got no one in the final third to put their chances away. Anthony Gordon was leading the line, one of their wingers, and so yeah, they were poor up front, and Isak will be licking his lips thinking, well, he's either going to get a massive pay increase contract-wise to keep him in the team because they really need him, or they're going to let him move on and they're going to have to buy another star striker because they're clearly lacking in that department. As for Villa, They did manage to come back into the game in the second half, but then they got Konsa sent off as last man, dragging down Gordon, who was through on goal. And so that was the only really talking point of the game, the only moment of the game worth mentioning. Villa needs to sign some players, but because of financial fair play, they're going to struggle in this transfer market. They've not been able to really get anybody. And they've just sold Jacob Ramsey to Newcastle. So, yeah, tough times for Villa fans. Hopefully they can stay towards the European places, but with a depleted squad and no money to spend, they're going to struggle. Then we went to the 3 o'clock kickoffs. One of them was Brighton-Fulham. They were a 1-1 draw. Brighton scored a penalty through Matt O'Reilly. There wasn't a great deal to talk about in this game, other than the fact that Fulham were able to claw back late on through super sub Muniz, who is subject to a lot of transfer talk at the minute. I believe he should be starting for Fulham. I don't know why not, because he clearly is a goal scorer. Maybe he's technically not great with build-up and pressing from the front line, but in terms of goals, production as a striker, he's top quality. But yeah, like I say, 1-1 draw, and we know these teams are going to be safe in the Premier League this season. Are they going to potentially chase European places again? I don't know. Obviously, Brighton lost João Pedro up front. I don't know who they've got up front to really challenge and score lots of goals, but to be honest, João Pedro was swapping places with Welbeck last season. So Brighton clearly don't feel like they need a star striker. And so, yeah, I think mid-table is what we're expecting from these teams. Another 3 o'clock kickoff was Spurs versus Burnley. Burnley being a newly promoted side, supposedly one of the better defensive teams that we've ever seen promoted, and yet Spurs just completely rattled them right from the off, scoring relatively early. And under Thomas Frank, they look a completely different team. Got a lot more energy about them, a lot more urgency. Richarlison up front scored 2 goals, a fantastic overhead kick. Thomas Frank he's not underrated because he's got a good job, but he is a really good manager. And I think this is a great opportunity for him to showcase that, not just through making the most of the current squad that they've got, but also through his signings and bringing in Mohamed Kudus from West Ham, who had a relatively poor season last year. Already he's come into this game, first game of the season, and bagged a couple of assists. He looks a different player on the wing. And yeah, they're obviously going to miss Son, an absolute legend for Spurs, but overall, they're going to be challenging for European places this year. They've kept Christian Romero at centre-back. And as for Burnley, look, it's really difficult for promoted sides to stay in the Premier League as it is. They don't have a big-time striker that they can rely on for goals. So even if they defend well, if they're not going to score enough, they're probably not going to stay in the Premier League for me. It's tough times for any of these promoted sides, but you've really got to spend money to have a shot at survival. And one of the other teams that has been promoted has managed to do a bit of that. They've spent over 100 million, so we'll talk about them in a second. But I think Scott Parker could be in trouble this season, not because of his activity in the transfer window. He's picked up people like Kyle Walker with Premier League experience, but I just think they're going to be under real pressure from the off to score goals. And if they're not scoring, they're not playing well, they're going to need something fresh, new ideas to spark life into this team. Hopefully not. I do like Burnley. But yeah, 3-0 to Spurs, and it could have been more. Moving on to another 3 o'clock kickoff, and this was one of the new teams that were promoted who've really hit the ground running, and it's Sunderland, because they beat West Ham 3-0. They hammered them, let's be honest. At home, the Stadium of Light was rocking, and a couple of their new boys really stood out as well. They've obviously got Granit Xhaka there in midfield, a former Arsenal player, and yeah, I think they're going to be a real problem at home at Sunderland, but away from home it's a completely different kettle of fish, isn't it? And so, will they pick up enough points at home? Time will tell, but fantastic start for them. But as for West Ham, I think they're going to struggle this season. Graham Potter did not finish the season well as West Ham manager last year, and they've come into this season with the same kind of lack of urgency. They look old, slow, no clear plan, and if they're conceding that many goals against the newly promoted side, it doesn't bode well for him. I think he's going to be under a lot of pressure, and he could be one of the first managers to fall for me. Could be in a relegation scrap as well. But yeah, like I say, great start for Sunderland. I do really hope that we can keep some of the promoted sides in the Premier League this year, because you don't want Championship teams just yo-yoing season to season. Great start. They spent a lot of money. Let's see what happens. And then the late kickoff on Saturday was Wolves versus Man City. City strolled to 4-0 win on the night. They never seemed to really come out of third gear. They were unbelievable. Haaland getting a couple of goals. He's going to be the favourite, isn't he, for top goal scorer, the Golden Boot, whatever you call it. And so, I think there's two things to talk about here. One is City and their new signings, because Reinders in midfield, Churchy coming on, bagging a goal, Aiton Nuri being fantastic for them at left back. They just look a lot more energetic. They've got a lot more youth in their side now of Man City. And I think it's really going to pay off for them in a big, big way, because you don't just fall from grace like they did last year. They did look old. They had Gundogan and Kovacic in midfield, whereas now they're going to potentially have Rodri, Reinders. And he looks a real talent, by the way, from AC Milan. On the day, he was brilliant. He scored a goal. He got an assist. He's box to box. He's a real engine. Got a lot of pace. And by him stretching the field, it's only going to create space for people like Haaland and the wingers to come in and chip in with some goals. So a really good performance by Man City. Whereas for Wolves, I think they're going to be in for a relegation scrap this year. They were close last year to the relegation zone, but their star men plucked them out of it. That was Cunha and Aiton Nuri. They haven't got those boys this year, and it really showed. They have made some signings, but we haven't seen anything of them yet in that first game. Obviously, Man City, they're not going to be playing them every week. But, could be tough times for Wolves. They're going to be one to watch. I think the manager's great, and they have got a fairly decent squad, much like West Ham, but if they're not scoring goals and they're obviously conceding a lot, then they're going to struggle. Moving on to the Sunday fixtures, one of the earlier kickoffs was Forest-Brentford. I have to say, Forest were really impressive. They just looked like they looked last year. They looked really solid. They had a real clear plan about them, a real system. Nuno has got them playing a great style of football, especially at home. They've kept hold of Gibbs White in midfield, Chris Wood with a brace on the day, their new boy, Ndoye, who's come from Italy. He was brilliant. He's their replacement for Elanga. And straight away he's coming in with a goal, so you can't get much better than that for a debut. So Forest, I think if they can manage the challenge of Europe and the league throughout this season, then they're a real shot at European places again. Why not? That first 11 is really good. They've kept hold of Murillo at centre back. They've still got Sells in net. They've still got their right and left backs. They've got Anderson in midfield. They're a real unit. The strength and depth could be an issue, and that's why Europe and things can put a strain on that squad. But in terms of the first 11, they're going to be a problem for any team in the Premier League this year. And as for Brentford, look, they've lost one of their key strikers in Buemo. He's gone to Man United. He bagged them a shed load of goals last year and obviously got a lot of assists as well. He's gone, so it really showed. They did score a goal. They got a penalty. Thiago scored it for them, one of their forgotten signings of last year. So he's got a real shot this year to play week in, week out, if he can stay fit. But obviously no Visser. He's probably going to be on his way out, potentially to Newcastle as their backup striker. Keith Andrews has got a real job in his hands there, hasn't he? I grew up watching Blackburn Rovers with my dad, and I remember Keith Andrews. I didn't rate him as a player, to be honest, but he was a real engine, a real talker. You could tell he was a leader, and he was given the captain's armband as well, I seem to recall. But to do the same as a manager is going to be tough, especially when he hasn't got as much quality in the squad. He's kept hold of a few of their names, but I think more than likely they're going to be bottom half this year. They're going to be close to the relegation zone to European places anyway. And it just comes down to losing those two strikers, Visser and Buemo, and obviously Thomas Frank, the way he had Brentford playing and the system that they had. He's took all his coaches with him to Spurs. In fact, Keith Andrews is the only one that he left. I think he was like the set-piece coach or something. It's funny how he's now the manager of Brentford. But yeah, obviously Brentford will try and give him time, but if they continue to lose games and ship a lot of goals like they did against Forest in game week 1, it could be really tough for Brentford this year. Moving on to Chelsea versus Palace. This was a 0-0 draw on Sunday, and it was a strange game. Palace looked by far the better side on the day. They even scored through Eze for a free kick, but it was disallowed through some strange law where an opposition player can't be too close to the wall. That's defending. Mark Gay was shoving Caicedo, and he must have got too close. And so, yeah, they disallowed it. It is what it is, I suppose, but yeah, harsh. I think Palace deserved to win on the day, to be honest. Chelsea looked sloppy, leggy, tired, and the fact that they were in the Club World Cup Championships is probably going to pay dividends now, isn't it? They're going to struggle a little bit for fitness for a few weeks as they get the team going again for this new season. But look, no one's feeling sorry for Chelsea. They've got a really deep squad, got some great players, haven't they? And they've made some great signings during summer transfer window, probably going to make some more. They have lost Colwell at centre-back. He's probably out for the season, or he's at least out for a long time. So that could be an issue for them. They maybe need a goalkeeper as well. Sanchez isn't the best. So I don't think Chelsea are going to be title challengers this year, but they've got a young team and they're starting to play good football, aren't they? They obviously played really well during the summer. So give them time and I'm sure they'll find their feet again. But Palace, look, if they can somehow keep hold of Adam Wharton, Mateta, Munoz at right wing back, they've got a fairly good team, haven't they? Obviously, they're probably going to lose Eze. And for me, this is where, as a Gunners fan, I'm mega frustrated because Eze should be coming to Arsenal. He is a real talent, and somehow Spurs are going to nick him from under our feet. He's a proven Premier League player, isn't he? He's very creative. He can play down the middle. He can play out wide. He's an England player now, isn't he? He gets in the England side. I rate him. I think he's brilliant. And the fact that Arsenal settled for Madueke really frustrates me. It really does. But it is what it is. Eze's probably going to go to Spurs. But I tell you, if Palace keep hold of Eze, then they're going to be a real shot for European places this year. Even though they've got Europe to compete in already, they're a really good team. They're well organised. Their manager's got a real system in place. And they're a handful. They really are. So, like I say, they should have won this game against Chelsea, really, away from home. So I'm not going to underestimate Palace this year if they can keep hold of some of their star men. But next year, Mark Gay, Wharton, Mateta, they could all be gone, couldn't they? And then it's back to the recruitment side of things again, trying to find these hidden gems. But yeah, boring game other than the fact that Palace should have won for that free kick, basically. And then the late kickoff on Sunday was Man United versus Arsenal, one of the classic Premier League fixtures. The fact that they put this on the opening weekend, I was sweating it. As an Arsenal fan up north, I just thought this is classic Arsenal loss written all over it. And to be fair, United came out of the traps fast. They were the better side on the day. They played some good football. They dominated for large parts of the game, which is normally an Arsenal habit. We're normally the ones with the ball, but we just couldn't get any rhythm in this game. We had Gokres up front, did nothing against De Ligt. I'm sure he'll find his feet. We've got Leeds next weekend at home, so hopefully it's an improvement there. But yeah, the front three for Arsenal just doesn't work for me. Or it didn't on this first day. The left side is just a problem. It is. Martinelli's not what he once was. He's not creative anyway. He's more likely going to score his own goals than create for other people. So the service just isn't there for Gokres, and he looked really leggy. He didn't look match fit. But I'm sure they're going to get time to find his feet in the Premier League. And he's a goal scorer, so once we start creating for him with Saka on the right, Ødegaard, Zubamendi, Rice, I think he'll be fine. He'll start banging goals in, I'm sure. He better do because he's in my fantasy team. But yeah, Arsenal won on the day for a set piece, and this is probably going to be one of United's weaknesses throughout the year because Their goalkeeper situation is a mess. Bayindir, or whatever his name is, was in net, flapped away. Just looked really weak in that corner. And Calafiori, free header at the back post. And that got us the victory, the 3 points. We didn't have to do a great deal beyond that other than defend. And my oh my, was it a tale of two ends, because with Bayindir being a mess at the one end for United, we had David Raya at the other, who was fantastic on the day. Made some really good saves against the new boys from United, Cunha and Buemo. And just on that, I think United could be a dark horse for European places this year. I know they had a shocker last year with Amorim. They had plenty of time to get that team going. But now he's getting rid of some of the dead weight, whether it be Garnacho, Rashford. Obviously, the striker situation looks to be fixed with Sesko now coming in. That front three with Bruno Fernandes creating for them, I tell you, they're going to be a handful. And they definitely gave us a run for our money. We left with 3 points, but we were relieved. Absolutely. So I'm not going to underestimate United this season. I think the expectations now are set. We're going to expect them to be in European places this year. So, yeah, good game for both teams. Arsenal scraped to win. Sign of champions or just a little bit of luck, I don't know. But that was a Sunday kickoff, which left us with only one more game, and that was the Monday night game, which was Leeds return to the Premier League, playing at home against Everton. On the night, they came away with a 1-0 win. They managed to get a penalty late on, and it was very controversial, let's be honest. James Tarkowski with his arm tucked in by his side, leans for the ball and it hits his upper arm. I suppose, yeah, he's leaned towards the ball and it's hit his arm, but it was in a natural position. He was tucked to his side, slightly behind his back. The fact that he's got muscles, basically, he's getting punished for being a big lad. Definitely not handball for me. But because the ref gave it, it was difficult for them to overturn through VAR. It wasn't clear and obvious. Look, that's an issue for itself. They need to sort out all these laws, these referee decisions. VAR, it's a mess. But to be honest, on the night, Everton were poor. Going forward, they had nothing. Leeds were energetic, pacey, had a lot of urgency about their play. They just lacked that clinical finish at the end, really. That finishing touch. And I know they've got strikers, but if they can find another goal scorer in the transfer window, in the summer transfer window, then they may have a shot at staying up. I don't know. They're going to cause teams problems just through their energy and their urgency, their pressure and pressing. But this weekend coming up, they've got Arsenal away, so it could be a completely different test for them because Arsenal will play a lot better football than Everton. As for Everton, the one bright spark for me was seeing Jack Grealish on the field again. I'm a Jack Grealish fan. I think on his day, he gives any defender a real challenge because he's so good on the ball, isn't he? He's just a wizard with the ball at his feet. But it just didn't work at City, did it? They have a real system about their play, their pressing. And whenever he got the ball, he was just always passing it back. There was never any freedom, expression to do his thing at City. And so, yeah, he's at Everton now on loan. Great signing for them. Hopefully Moyes can just let him play. Give him the freedom to do his thing. He would naturally draw out defenders to close him down because he can take on anybody, can't he? Which is just going to free up space for the other players. So great signing for them. Let's hope we get the best version of Jack Grealish again because he could be in the England squad next summer if he has a good season. So that's the only bright spark for Everton for me. They were poor. So with game week 1 out of the way, it's probably worth looking at game week 2. So there's a few games that I thought definitely worth highlighting from the fixtures. You can see here we've got Man City versus Spurs there. That's going to be a Saturday afternoon kickoff. That should be a good game. You know, they look a completely different side to Spurs, but City have got their energy again, haven't they, with their new signings? So I'm looking forward to that one. We've also got Arsenal versus Leeds, who I mentioned before. Being an Arsenal fan, we need to start playing good football. Like the Arsenal fans are not patient. You know, we we had Arsene Wenger for so many years, and for large parts of it, we played some really good stuff. So Arteta has to start getting this team playing. We've got ourselves a star striker. We need to see him scoring goals, and what better opportunity than to do it against the newly promoted side away from home. So, yeah, I think Leeds is a great opportunity for us to get a decent performance, obviously 3 points, but Leeds play really well on Monday night, so they're not going to lie down, are they? They're going to give Arsenal a good game. And then another fixture I thought worth mentioning was Newcastle versus Liverpool. I don't think the Isak situation is going to be fixed by then. You never know, there's still this time between now and then, but that's going to be Monday night, 8 o'clock kickoff. Look, Newcastle need a striker. So I don't think they're going to have one by the kickoff. But I think there's always a great atmosphere there. And with this Isak situation going on, you know the Newcastle fans are going to be up for that one. They're going to make it really difficult, hostile for Liverpool. And they did look vulnerable against Bournemouth on Friday. So who's to say that their wingers can't cause problems? Elanga, Harvey Barnes, Gordon. Newcastle have got some talent there, haven't they? So, yeah, I think Liverpool are to be gone at. I really think they could be in trouble against Newcastle, but I'm doubtful of it just because of the lack of striker. Whereas Liverpool have got all their holes filled in, haven't they? They've got some great players, haven't they? So, yeah, those are the 3 fixtures worth mentioning. Bring on game week 2. So that's game week 1 in the books. There were some real standout performances from newly promoted sides, the big boys getting off to good starts. Yeah, lots of new signings making their debuts, some looking a bit leggy, others hitting the ground running. Yeah, lots to talk about, and it was just great to have football back. I mean, you know, being a football fan up north here in Lancashire, grew up watching Blackburn Rovers with my dad. There's nothing like the Premier League. You know, there's just nothing like it. I don't watch Championship football. I got into Arsenal when I was like 9 or 10 years old when Bergkamp, Pires, Henry all came to Ewood Park one weekend. It just blew me away. And yeah, I've been following them ever since. So yeah, if you are new to the channel, my name's Tom, Arsenal fan, but I like to talk about all things football. So hopefully you can stick around for more episodes this season because I'm going to be here to chat to you about football, whether it just be news, headlines, obviously match reactions, and some few topical debate episodes as well throughout the year. So do stick around, consider hitting subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next one.